千里之行，始于足下。A journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath the feet. We now gather in the Tao to travel the journey together. Welcome to Tao Talks with Derek Lin, where we take a deep dive into the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. I would like to extend a warm welcome to you. Thank you for joining us. I would like to invite you to center your thoughts and direct your attention to this moment in time, to the here and now, to be fully present and mindfully aware as we all ready ourselves for this sacred process in the Tao with one another. Let's explore exactly what Lao Tzu means when he talks about the 5 colors. It turns out that we can find plenty of corresponding hints and clues throughout the Tao Te Ching itself. This is one of the major topics of the Tao Te Ching, that the material world offers so many temptations, so many things, so many traps. So just by looking around at the other chapters of the Tao Te Ching, we can find references to that and therefore gain insights into what is on the mind of Lao Tzu. My first example here, Tao Te Ching 9. So we talked about this chapter not that long ago. So look at the lines, especially line 5. Line 5 says, gold and jade fill up the room. And then it goes on to say, no one is able to protect them. Well, the gold and jade by themselves, the color gold, the color jade, the greenish color, these are the colors that are among the 5 colors of distractions in the material world. This is because this is referenced multiple times because the sages, including Lao Tzu, noted the colors of wealth drew the most attention from most people. And if you think about how the world is for us, that really hasn't changed very much. It is still the same. There's not just the gold and silver, there's also the glittering colors of jewels and gems. And again, based on our own experience in life, we know we have seen people get blinded by the colors of wealth, spiritually blinded. They lose sight of the real meaning or the intangible treasures in their lives. The reason why you and I have all seen this many times is because examples are just literally everywhere. Every direction you turn, you can see examples like that. So what else? What else does Lao Tzu mean by the 5 colors? Let's explore another one. Here, we want to talk about appearance. Remember, the 5 colors have to do with the colorful sights, the various sights that can be seen by the eyes. This includes surface appearance. Tao Te Ching 2 is the one that makes references to it. It says, when the world knows beauty as beauty, ugliness arises. That is a sharp insight into our world where we talk about not judging a book by its cover, but in reality, we often do exactly that. We all know surface appearance does not tell the whole story. We know, for instance, that someone who looks trustworthy may not be. It takes time to really get to know that person, to gauge that aspect of their personality. Now, in terms of appearance, in terms of looking past it, that is what Tao cultivators work on, to see beyond the surface level. We know many people are still easily taken by the superficial, and we want to aspire to be different. We see these people taken in by physical beauty, surface appearance. They too are blinded by the 5 colors. So there's more. Here we have Tao Te Ching Chapter 44. It says, line 1, fame or the self, which is dearer? Well, this question comes up because fame is the other major attractor other than wealth. It's the other big temptation in life. And that's why we often talk about them together. We talk about fame and fortune. So the color of fame, what would that be? Well, that particular color is the brightness of the spotlight shining on the person with the inflated ego. The color of fame is the egocentric person's image on the big screen or the billboard, the high profile. It is therefore the color of glorification. And indeed, in Tao Te Ching Chapter 3, Lao Tzu talks about do not glorify the achievers, because the 5 colors includes that, the color of glorification. When it comes to fame, from personal experience, we know that some people pursue fame at the outset. They may not care that much about material wealth, but they definitely desire the public adulation. Now, that's not all the people that pursue fame. Some also, other groups, they pursue fame after they have gained material wealth. And of course, they will use part of their material resources to, in effect, purchase fame, purchase popularity, just like they purchase other things. We know the blinding effect of fame is no less powerful than wealth. We have all seen, for instance, celebrities who struggle with mental health issues. Sometimes we hear about child stars who experience difficulties and challenges growing up and then entering society as adults. Spiritual blindness for them is at an extreme level of severity. And after all, that is part of the point Lao Tzu is making. Okay, what else is there with the 5 colors? I'm going to present one that nobody really talks about, but I think you will find that it makes sense. Tao Te Ching 53. Tao Te Ching 53 says the great Tao is broad and plain, but people like the side paths. The side paths are the tempting shortcuts in life. They are things we see. They are shortcuts to wealth, power, fame, popularity, love, and so on. Generally speaking, when people see a way that seems like it may lead to desirable things, a lot of them will take it. Now, of course, they will then discover it is illusory. The bait that was dangled in front of them will disappear. It'll vanish. Now, they've gone perhaps quite a ways into the shortcut, so now they are lost. They may have trouble finding their way back. They realize at that point that they have been spiritually blinded to take this path. So Here's what we're saying. The side paths are things that we see. How are they colors? Aren't they just like little shortcuts? Well, the bait for the side path for people to take them is the mirage or the illusion of the 5 colors of the world, the tempting distractions, the seductions. So it isn't just the 5 colors that distract people, tempt people. It is even just the illusion, the suggestion, the mirage of it. Even that has the power to do it. And that is how powerful the 5 colors are. Now, when I talk about these shortcuts, I need to point out one thing. When people are lured into them and then they end up lost, perhaps losing their material resources as well, this is exactly how scams work in ancient times and also in our world today. And because human nature is not likely to change, fundamentally, scammers will continue to be around to prey on people, present shortcuts, because people keep falling for them. People keep taking the bait. So now you can see the scope of the 5 colors actually cover a lot of ground. What does Lao Tzu mean by the 5 sounds? Here again, we can see examples all over the other chapters of the Tao Te Ching, and this helps us determine that we are on the right track when we talk about this. How do we know that our interpretation of these immortal lines are the correct ones? Well, one way to tell is that if we find correspondence in the other chapters of the Tao Te Ching, chances are pretty good that we're being very accurate. And what I always talk about is that I can guarantee that in an authentic tradition of the Tao, what we talk about will be 100% accurate and true to the ancients. So let's talk about examples of the 5 sounds from other chapters of the Tao Te Ching. I want to start with chapter 81. This is the very last chapter of the Tao Te Ching. And there is a line in there that describes one of the 5 sounds quite accurately. We talked about flattery. Here it is. Line 2 of chapter 81, beautiful words are not true. Now, pleasing to hear, the beautiful lies are very pleasing. As I said, they're gratifying to the ego, but they're ultimately untrue. Now, we, of course, are aware of this phenomenon in the West. People used to say flattery will get you nowhere when they detect attempts for someone to brown nose. Nowadays, we also hear the opposite, sometimes in a joking manner. Flattery will get you everywhere. And this is a recognition of the power in saying what people want to hear. And this is why Lao Tzu wrote, beautiful words are not true in 81. It corresponds with what we're talking about with the 5 sounds, because the words may be appealing, but they will deafen your ability to hear the truth. Now, let me also take a moment to point out that in the same chapter, 81, if you look just a little bit below that, you see those who are good do not debate. Those who debate are not good. So I need to address that as well. Tao sages have long recognized the potentially toxic effects of arguments and debating tactics. In the modern world, sometimes we talk about debates in a positive light. I think you know what I mean. We talk about oh, it's an opportunity to educate, for people to learn from a different perspective. When you share what you think, other people can learn from you in a healthy debate. That's what we say. But the sad truth is that most of the time, debates are never about clarification. They're only about winning. That is the reality of our human nature. And that reality is the reason why there are tactics like the Gish Gallop. The Gish Gallop is a rapid, non-stop stream of falsehoods intended to overwhelm the opponent. And we have seen examples of this, definitely in recent times, where people will just keep going and going, telling one lie after another, and this gives the appearance or perception of dominating the opponent and therefore victory. And think about how we often fall into this trap ourselves, even when we argue with loved ones. So by me pointing this out based on the writing of Lao Tzu, based on chapter 81, I think this is something that we should all pay attention to in two ways. One, in public discourse, we want to be aware when this is happening, when debating is just plain toxic, doesn't serve us at all. And in our personal lives, realizing that when we engage in tactics like that, it is no justification to sacrifice the truth. So altogether, from 81, the deafening effect of the five sounds in this context is, as I said, when you lose your judgment of right and wrong, true and false. And of course, I recognize this is very much relevant in our world today. We are all being put on blast of the five sounds. We see how, for many people, the truth is no longer objective, but whatever holds sway in their little reality bubbles. We want to use that as a cautionary note to prevent us from falling into the same trap. So what else about the five sounds? Well, there's chapter 5 of the Tao Te Ching. It ends on this particular note. Too many words hasten failure, cannot compare to keeping to the void. The void is the silent void of the Tao. So this is talking about the five sounds in terms of noise, too much noise, too many words, cacophony. It is important to realize that words don't have to be beautiful lies or misleading to deafen the sense of judgment. Too many words, even if true, can also overwhelm with too much information, too much complexity. I think everybody knows what I mean when I say that in our daily lives, we prefer to get to the point. So if you and I have to wade through a lot of stuff, we quickly lose interest. We move on to something else. Conversely, we know there are people out there, they will obscure a particular point by burying it under many words, because they know many people won't bother digging through all the noise to find the signal. So for all of these reasons, Lao Tzu would definitely categorize too much noise, too many words as the cacophony part of the five sounds. So now we want to do the same thing with the five flavors as we have done with the five colors and the five sounds. We want to explore, well, what does Lao Tzu mean by the five flavors? Are there other places, references in other chapters of the Tao Te Ching that can shed some light to that? So the answer is yes. Tao Te Ching 53. Let's take a quick look. This is where Lao Tzu is describing corrupt officials. And in the third line of that description, Lao Tzu wrote that these corrupt officials fill up on drinks and food. They are overindulgence. They have excess, and it's a bottomless pit, so they are still not satisfied. Therefore, Lao Tzu identifies excessive consumption as one of the traits of corruption. And you can see with the other descriptions that we have here, officials wear fineries, carry sharp swords, and then the last line, acquire excessive wealth. These are all signs of power and wealth. These are among the 5 colors because they denote success in the material world. And then right in the middle of that, we see the reference to drinks and food. So just as the 5 colors can blind the eyes and have blinded the spirituality of the corrupt officials, the 5 flavors will numb the taste. That is to say, these corrupt officials may project the appearance of living large, living the good life, but internally, they, spiritually, are blind and numb. So what else? What else does Lao Tzu mean by the 5 flavors? Well, Lao Tzu wanted to make a point. It's not just about the corrupt officials, it's actually about everybody. This we see in Tao Te Ching Chapter 20. And here's the excerpt from that. Here, Lao Tzu is describing people. The people are excited as if enjoying a great feast. This is something that Lao Tzu points out as being different from him and the Tao sages. He says people are excited as if enjoying a great feast, as if climbing up the terrace in spring. But then he says, I alone am quiet and uninvolved. Now, let's back away from that for just a moment. Focus on the great feast. Excessive consumption, Lao Tzu is pointing out, is actually the norm in society, not the exception. Especially today, we live in abundant times. Therefore, excessive consumption is even more of a norm than it was in ancient times. Now, back in the days of old, in ancient times, people did feast in celebration. Today, we do the same thing. And we, as an example, sometimes we joke around about going into a food coma after Thanksgiving dinner. So for Lao Tzu, this common practice of celebration is not necessarily for him just because everyone else does it. Now, Tao sages still can enjoy celebrations. It's just that they never do it to excess. They don't want to become jaded. The bottom line here is that whether the overindulgence is done by official or commoner, it leads to the palate becoming jaded, making it harder to enjoy the subtle flavors of food. And this is what Lao Tzu meant when he wrote, you lose the sense of taste. Of course, there is a whole bunch of other negative effects associated with this. With overindulgence, there's discomfort, the feeling of being bloated, fatigue, you want to take a nap, weight gain, health issues, cholesterol, blood sugar, the list goes on. But the bottom line is, it has a detrimental effect, just like the 5 colors and the 5 sounds. Now, another important point that typically people don't get into we're going to get into it today is that when we talk about the 5 flavors, we've already talked about how it isn't just corrupt officials that overindulge. It's actually everybody. It's actually, especially today, it's actually people like you and me. Well, another level beyond that, yet a deeper level of exploration will tell us that for the Tao sages, it's not just about the food either. It's about the taste. It's about the physical sensation, which can apply in so many different ways. So we have covered a lot of ground today, so we're able to do part 1 and part 2 of the summary. Part 1 is all about the 5 colors, the 5 sounds, and the 5 flavors. Lao Tzu is cautioning us against all of them. The 5 colors, here's a little review as to what they are. Not literal, but all about the material world. And the 5 colors are metaphorical language for distractions, temptations in the material world. And I pointed out that it can be side paths, shortcuts, illusions. Even the mirage of 5 colors can be tempting, can be distracting. Then we have the 5 sounds. What are the 5 sounds? Well, in chapter 81, Lao Tzu talks about beautiful words that are not true, the flattering remarks. And then there is also lies and misleading statements. That's the other major category. And then I've got the cacophony, the noise, the too many words that say too little so that there's no peace and quiet. So those are the 5 sounds. And then the 5 flavors. As we have just discussed, not just about the food, but physical sensations. And I mentioned cigarette smoking. Well, we wouldn't consider that to be food, but it's very much part of this category. So attachments to sensory input can lead us astray. As you heard from the story today, it can make us forget the original purpose for the consumption. Then we started to get into the hunting, the racing, the goods that are difficult to obtain. So here's what Lao Tzu is noticing or observing about people. Even in ancient times, Lao Tzu noted that people often pursued thrills to excess. And back in those days, it was racing on horseback and, of course, other forms of entertainment available to the wealthy, the privileged, the elites. Hunting was popular. And Lao Tzu also noticed that whether noble or commoner, many people pursue material things deemed desirable. So nobody seemed to be immune from this. Everybody wants something. Most people, with the possible exception of the Tao sages and the Tao cultivators, who recognize this particular trap and stay away from it. So then the sages. Now, we're going to talk about this in much more details next time, but sages will mind the stomach and not the eyes. So I'll talk about exactly what that means. Sages will discard those that do not contribute to our lives, and these have a lot to do with the 5 colors, the 5 sounds, and the 5 flavors. They're distractions. They just give you sensory overload. And when we talk about hunting and racing, they're material thrills. Then the sages will take what actually provides real value in life, like the Tao itself. And these have to do with things like the spirituality to be tranquil and living the simple life. So all of this, we're going to talk about a lot more next time. Our meeting has come to an end, but the journey continues on. Until next time, may the Tao fill you with peace and happiness.